Hello, my name is Dredrick, and this is my video explaining MechWarrior Online to newer players. I've been asked to make this video by several people, so I figured might as well make one to help new people get into the game and figure the game out, since there's not really that much good information for a brand new player. So to start things off with, first thing you want to do, if you haven't completed the academy, pause the video, complete the academy. It's right here, this little tab over here on the left. If you haven't completed it, go complete this academy. It is imperative that you do. They'll teach you how to move, how the mech works, and if you're not comfortable with how the mech moves, then you need to do a little more just practice in the academy. Okay, now that you have the basics down of mech combat, or if you already know how to play, we're going to continue on to the interface. This is where a lot of people get stuck. So I'm going to start in the bottom left corner, and we'll move our way around clockwise. Okay, so bottom left corner, you got the exit game button. This brings you to log out or exit game. You also have your mech credits, which is like your paid currency for the game. You have your C-bills, which is your in-game currency. This is where you're going to use to buy like most of your modules and new mechs. You have your GXP, which is the general experience points. We will get to that later. Don't worry about it. You have your premium time here, which this will tell you how much premium time you have. Premium time gives you extra C-bills and mech experience after the battle. And then this is your current selected battle mech, which will just tell you what mech you have selected. That window is not really that important, so don't worry about it too much. Moving up a little bit is the a list of buttons here. Half of these are completely pointless. So select mech means you can just go and select different mech. Inventory is going to be all your items, so if you click that, it'll bring up this, which will have a bunch of stuff here. Don't worry too much about that. Don't look into it too much to start with. You probably will rarely ever use that menu. Achievements, this will give you all your achievements in the game. There's not that many. The ones you need to worry about are the academy ones. These ones here are pretty much freebies for money. And then there is, at the bottom of the achievements list, there's the cadet bonuses. For your first 25 battles, you will get cadet bonuses, and they are quite large. They're like 1 million C-bills, premium time. Some of them give supply caches. I think the last one gives, yeah, like a mech bay. So these will vary based on which one you do. So your first 25 missions will have that. You'll get an achievement for each of those. The rest of them aren't really that important. They're neat to get, they're fun, but they're not really that important to have. Manage drop decks, don't worry about this button. You'll rarely ever use it, if ever. Convert XP, don't worry about this button. You'll rarely ever use it. But if you do ever need to, that's how you convert XP from a mech, so you can put in another mech. I'm gonna tell you this is pretty much a waste of time and a waste of money. You're better off spending your mech credits on other things. You will get XP pretty quickly. That doesn't really matter. Statistics, this will bring you to the website for your stats of your account. You probably will never touch this button. The leaderboard button is completely useless. Redeem code will do the same thing as the stat button does. It'll bring you to the website so you can put in the code to redeem. Titles and badges, this is the button that will give you, if you want to use a different title for to display in game, because in game you'll have your name, your title, and the mech you're running. It'll show that to other players. Once again, this affects nothing in the game except to make you look cool, to show off, you know, that you have gotten the coveted ace of spades. You've gotten the really hard to get liquid metal, or that you spent $120 on this game back when it first was released. Badges are the exact same thing. They're badges for different random events or whatnot, and that's what those do. Purely cosmetic, they affect nothing in the game itself. Testing grounds, this is actually going to be a very useful area. You use this, you select a map, you hit go. You can play your mech in a map that has some dummy mechs standing around, but you can test how the heat of your mech is affected on different maps, because the things like Frozen City is a very cool running map. Your mech's going to perform differently on Frozen City than it will on, let's say, Tourmaline Desert, terra firma, you know, those harder maps. Those harder maps are going to be harder on your mech, especially if you're a laser build. You have a little more heat generation. Now we're going to start explaining the top section of the screen. So on the left here, you have your pilot name, your title, your pilot skill rating. Honestly, none of this information is important. You can just hit the minimize button for now. Just kind of clean up your UI a bit. Across top of this orange bar, supply cache progress. Once again, one of the things that really doesn't matter that much. When you get them, it's kind of neat to open them and see what you get, but there's normally nothing important in them anymore. Kind of ignore this. On the right is your unit name, which will have your unit tag and how many people are in the unit. Once again, minimize it. It's not really that important. You have the home button, which will bring you back to this screen if you ever push it. Mech Lab will bring you to the Mech Lab of the mech you're working on. You will use this button a lot. The store button will bring you to the store, so you can see what's on sale. You can see what is happening in the game for, you know, different bundles you can buy. If you want to buy a battle mech, I'll show you how to do that later. But this is the interface for the store. And then on the right, you have faction play. Don't touch this for right now. If you're a new player, don't go into faction. There's nothing to really do here. Honestly, for new players, don't even touch it. Don't even look at it. There's nothing there for you. There's nothing even there for experienced players. Not anymore. This little drop down arrow will help you dictate regions. If you're in North America, you want to have North America selected. You might have European selected. You'll get about 150 ping in European, but it'll give you access to more players for you to match with. If you're in North America, you have Oceanic selected, you will have up to 300 plus ping, which will give you a delay on when you fire shots. Newer players, I advise staying away from Oceanic if you're not skilled enough to compensate for that lag, because it is noticeable. And then the quick play button, that's the button that just gets you into a match. You push that and it'll match make you with whoever's out there. Moving over to the bottom of the screen, because there's nothing on the right side, is just a few little buttons here. So this big box here, which will tell you the class of mech you have, just give you a bunch of quick information. How much XP you have on the mech, if you're wanting to skill it out, how many skill points it has, and if it has any bonuses going for it. You can also minimize this tab here if you just want to clean up the UI a little bit. You have this button here, which will show you the mech. You can look around at your mech kind of, and you know, get screenshots or whatever you want to do. This button here is the event button. I'll go into that in a second. This button here is for news and promotions. That's that kind of splash screen you get when you load up the launcher. This right here just tells you whatever's happening, kind of what's going on. Not really that important. I never really look at it. This right here will open up your chats, so your different chat boxes. Honestly, you rarely ever use that one. This will open up, you're looking for a group panel, which will be this. I will go into that later. And then this here is how you add friends and whatnot. I'll go into that one later also, but this is also a very important button. Now in the far right corner is your settings button. We will go into settings. That's another part of the video that we'll go into. Different settings that I use personally, different settings that other people like to use. Honestly, a lot of it is your choice, but there are some things that are just a distinct advantage to have turned off or changed. Okay, so now we're going to go into the event menu for right now. This is going to be a little quick section here. On the events tab, when you push it, it's going to load. It's going to take a little bit to load. The important part here, future events, past events, don't worry about either of those tabs. The active events is the important one. This will be a list of things that are going on. Right now we have the advent calendar for Christmas time, because it is December 22nd when I'm recording this. But you also have like these platinum collection events and things like that. Whenever there's an event going on for a free mech, for free C-bills, free items, this is where you go to redeem all of that. You'll go into whatever it is and you'll hit the redeem button here, or there'll be a claim button here. That's very important for if you ever have to, see the button here, it says lock, this will say claim. If you ever want to claim any of that stuff, go in there and do that. If you're new to the game, you've been playing for a bit, you probably have some things here that you don't even know you have completely for free that you just haven't claimed yet. Go into there, claim everything. It'll tell you, I want to say it'll tell you right here if it's available to be claimed, or it'll give like a little symbol here if it's available to be claimed. Go in there, claim your stuff. It's free. Who knows what you'll get. All right, so now we're going to move on to the friends menu, which is going to be this little button here. This is how you're going to add people and things of that nature. So you have 5 tabs up here. You have a block tab. That's where all those blocked people go whenever they're spamming in chat or whatever. That's where they go. You'll never like this list. Your friends list is where all your friends are. And to add a friend, it's this gold button here. Add a friend, type their name in, hit send friend request, and you can add people there. You can create groups from here. Groups is how you play with other people. You can create a private lobby from here. Private lobbies, don't worry about those. That's for more advanced users. Maybe in a later video I'll go over private lobbies. Don't worry about open chat window. Unit, this is where your unit is. Kind of the same thing as the friends list. It's just a group of people that you are in a unit with. Alerts, this is where you'll have whenever people send you friend invites, whenever people send you invites to join the unit, people send you invites to join their group so you can play with them. That's going to be here. This is a very important tab to know where it is because it is a little bit hidden. LFG, if you're wanting to join a group and people don't want to try to put in your name, you can just hit this button, add me to looking for group queue, and then whenever they are in their group, they can find you in that LFG tab and they can just invite you straight in, so they don't have to look up your name. And that's really it for this window. It's an important window, but it is one that is kind of, unfortunately, a little bit small and hidden. All right, so let's go into buying your first mech, or second or fourth or whatever. So how you go about doing that is going to be going to store. You'll go to, it's in the home tab. This will show you what's on sale. The bundles will give you the bundles. Honestly, rarely ever go into this tab. A lot of these bundles are not worth it. We'll get into bad mechs in a second. Mech bays, you can buy mech bays if you need them. Boosters, this is how you buy premium time if you need it. Consumables, don't ever buy these from here. There's no reason to. So if you go to the battle mechs tab, it separates them by light, medium, heavy assault, champion, and hero. The champion variants you rarely will ever get. I would avoid champion variants because all they do is XP bonus. That's it. You'll actually get some of them for free during events. So don't worry about champion variants. There's no point ever buying them because you can only buy them for mech credits. That is extremely not worth it. So instead, you just buy the regular variants. I'm going to go and buy the Hunchback 4 SP. I've never bought one. I'd like to own one. So I'm going to go to Hunchback, which you can see on here is right here. I'm going to add this to the cart. I'm going to add the cart for C-bills. You can pay mech credits for it. I'm going to choose not to, and I would advise you not to. Only ever pay mech credits for hero mechs. I'll explain hero mechs in a second. Now add it to the cart, and the cart's right here, top right corner. I can then hit purchase cart. Yes, I would like to purchase the cart. And now it says owned one. I now have a Hunchback 4 SP in my mech lab. Hero mechs are these guys here. Hero mechs usually have a unique paint scheme. They usually have something weird or special about them that makes them unique to play in some way. They also earn 30% more C-bills, which is a pretty big chunk, especially if you have premium time, because you can get 50% more C-bills from premium, 30% more C-bills from being a hero mech. Obviously, you can see where that goes. That's 80% more C-bills just from playing this mech. So, for example, the Hunchback Gridiron here, it has some special ability that it can shoot Gauss rifles faster. I'll get into quirks in a second during the mech lab portion, where I'm going to show you how to build a mech, how to look at the quirks, and kind of try to figure out how it works. It's in no means a comprehensive building guide, but it definitely will get you in the right direction, so you can at least build a mech that's more user-friendly to what you're going to need to use it for. All right, now to find that mech, let's go back to the home tab here. I'm gonna hit select mech, And this is where things kind of get overwhelming, because for you, it's probably going to look more like this. So I'm going to explain this real quick to you. This is just how to search for your mechs. You can search them by name by just typing in Hunchback. And as you can see, it's going to pull up all my Hunchback variants. You can also sort by both Inner Sphere Clan. So if you want to look at just Inner Sphere mechs or Clan mechs, and for owned and trial mechs. And then you have all these little tabs that you can sort your different mechs by. So like light, medium, heavy, assault, obviously champion. So you can have these one of these selected and one of these 3 here selected. So you can go heavy champions or heavy hero mechs, and it'll show you your heavy hero mechs. You can do hero and special, so you can filter out a little bit based on what you're wanting to do. If you're grinding out C-bills, hero and special is what you want selected, so you can see all your mechs that have that 30% C-bill boost to them. So I'm looking for that Hunchback. Now Hunchback was not a hero mech, nor was it a special mech. So if I look here, there it is, Hunchback 4SP. Brand new mech. Usually you'll make that nice green paint scheme, and then you're going to hit the loadout button. This will show you how the mech is built, what's loaded out as. This right here is going to be the most complicated interface, but also the most helpful interface, because this is how you build your mech, and I'm going to explain a little bit in detail to try to kind of follow along on how building your mech is going to go, right? So I'm going to start off with doing like a beginner's build of something very simple, and then I can start getting into like the nitty-gritty of each individual little slot and how that's going to affect the performance of the mech itself. So I'm going to start by stripping the mech. I'm just going to strip all the equipment so we can talk about what each of these little areas does. So if you notice here, you have your right arm, right torso, head, left torso, left arm, center torso, right leg, left leg. If you don't know already, the way you die is if you lose your center torso, or which contains your engine, or you lose your head, or you lose both legs. Those are the 3 ways you die, right? There is not any other way to die. I guess technically if you have a light engine, you lose both torsos. We will get into that later, but that's kind of corner case. So we're going to start with each individual square. So on the right arm, what this is going to break down is how many hard points you have. Yellow star indicates energy hard points. This has 2 in the right arm. This is your armor. From here you can add or subtract armor. We will get into the way armor layout works in a bit, but usually you want to have maxed out armor on a lot of your components, because armor equals survivability. Longer you're alive, the more damage you can do, the more fun you're having, because the more game you can play. Down here, it's going to tell you the maximum amount of armor you can have. Your structure you can't change. It's either is a lot or a little or in between. There's nothing you can change on structure. Then equipped, so it's going to show you your fixed equipment. You can't really change these on most mechs. They're kind of there. You just kind of leave them, and then you can see all the empty slots. This is where you can start adding stuff in, like lasers, small lasers, or you can add in PPCs. These are all energy weapons, right? So you can add those in to these slots, but you're limited on your tonnage. So there's slots and there's tonnage. This is a 50-ton mech. We have 15 tons on it right now, which is pretty much all armor. So as such, we need to fill up this tonnage and start filling up these slots and making a mech that works. So your right torso, more of the same, kind of laid out the same way, but it has a missile slot. 1 missile hardpoint means I can put 1 of these missile items in that slot, in some of these slots. I'll kind of show you a bit around that. Head, it just has 1 empty slot. This actually has energy hardpoint in the head. Most mechs have nothing in the head, but if you lose your head, you do die. That being said, it is a slot to put like ammo usually, or if you have a slot like this where it has like a weapon hardpoint, put a weapon there. You can technically never lose it. You will always have something in your head that you can use, because if you lose your head, you're dead anyway. So it's kind of a good idea if you have a weapon hardpoint in the head to utilize it. And the left torso, more of the same, but we have another icon. We have AMS. AMS stands for anti-missile system. And the anti-missile system is how you defend yourself against things like LRMs, because this what automatically shoot down missiles around you. There used to be a reason to use regular AMS. There really isn't anymore, because use regular AMS and a ton of ammo for it. It's 1.5 tons anyway. Just use laser AMS if you're going to use AMS. It works the exact same and has infinite ammo. Left arm, same as the right arm. Your left leg and right leg is just 2 more empty slots that you can use for heat sinks or ammo or whatever. But you kind of want to make sure you have armor on your legs. They're not that important, but if you lose both your legs, you're dead. You lose one of your legs, you slow down to a crawl. So they're kind of important to keep alive, but not important to put stuff in them. Your center torso is your main component. This is where if you lose your center torso, you are dead. It is game over for you. You die. Your mech drops. This is where your engine sits too. Then you have 2 slots here you can put stuff in. So your engine is your heart and soul of your machine. Let's go over engines real quick since we're already in the center torso, and we're going to start with an engine usually. You have standard engines. These are usually quite heavy, but they range from 1 ton all the way up to 21.5 tons. The bigger the engine you put in, the faster the mech goes. Also, the more internal heat sinks it has. We'll get into heat sinks in a second. There's a lot of things we'll get into in a second. Kind of try to follow along. It's a little difficult, I know. So standard heat sinks, once you put them in, they only take up this slot here, but they're usually pretty heavy, right? But if you lose your left and right torso, you don't die. You're still technically running, and whatever weapon you have in your head, you can still use. So run around doing that. XL engines, though, are quite a bit lighter. So let's look at an XL250. XL250 is 12.5 tons. On XL standard is 18.5 tons. You're saving 6 tons of your mech by using XL engine. XLs, though, have one fatal flaw. 2 fatal flaws. One is that they take up 3 slots in each torso, which gives you less room to put weaponry in there. And this mech, that's not that big of a deal because your weapons are not that big on a medium. And mediums and lights are usually the ones you will see with XLs more. Problem is, if you lose a left torso, that's it. Your mech is dead. If you lose either torso or the center, your mech dies, because that's just the way XL engines are. That's their big Achilles heel. But they do save a lot on weight, so you can put more stuff in your mech. Then we move to light engines. Light engines are kind of like the happy medium between XL and the standard. It is lighter, 15.5 for the 250. We're going to use 250 as kind of like the medium, versus 18.5 for a standard. So, will you save 3 tons? 3 tons is big. That's 3 weapons that you can put on, or maybe one bigger weapon that you can put on because of that. So usually, if you can pull a light engine, you should try to use a light engine. Standards are usually for heavier, bigger mechs that need more survivability. This mech here, we're looking for some survivability. So we're going to start with an LE250. The reason I'm going with the 250, or something at 250 or above, is because of heat sinks. So if you see it's a size box, there's a lot of stats in here. The important ones are speed and heat sinks. Heat sinks being 10. You have to have 10 heat sinks in your mech to be able to run it. Have to. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The game will force you to have 10 heat sinks. So if you pick a smaller engine than a 250, like even if you go one step down to like a 245, this only has 9 heat sinks, which means you have to put a normal heat sink in your mech, which will take up more tonnage and slots for rarely any benefit. So you kind of will want to go to 250. That's a good range to stay around. This is definitely like where I like to sit on a lot of my mediums. And you're moving at 81 kph speed, which is it's a pretty good speed. So we're going to start with the light engine 250. And what that tells me here is I got about 19.5 tons to work with for the rest of my mech. My armor is pretty much maxed out everywhere else I would like to have it. You want most of your armor in the front of your torsos, and your rear you want a little bit protected. This is more for allies shooting you in the back, and because people will accidentally shoot you in the back sometimes, or if you're running away or going up a ramp or something and someone does hit you in the back, they'll just immediately kill you. You want to have a little bit of back armor. It makes a big difference. It goes a long way. I wouldn't go any more than 10 points usually. It's just not worth it. You're going to use your front armor way more than your back armor. So these are all the weapon systems. We'll go over individual weapon systems I'll probably have to go over that in another video, but there are basic weapon systems we can go over, and we'll go over each of these tabs right now. So there's energy weapons, missile weapons. Missile weapons are going to be like kind of like a projectile weapon, but they're going to fire in groups or clusters. AMS, and usually there's a fourth point of ballistics here. This mech doesn't have ballistic slots, therefore ballistics doesn't even show up. Ammo, this is where you put in ammo for the system. So let's put in a SRM6. If you look at ammo, now it's going to show me SRM ammo that I can add into the mech. Equipment, this is where your sensors and your miscellaneous stuff is going to be. The sensors have these targeting computers. Honestly, these are not very useful for most mechs, and even then you wouldn't go over a Mark 1 or a Mark 2. All these other target computers are now just kind of a waste of space and a waste of tonnage. They're not really worth using. They're very, very corner case anymore, unfortunately. Beagle Active Probe, this is a sensor that's really handy for a lot of mechs that have to have lock on at closer range. If you're running streak missiles, which have to lock on at closer range, these are pretty good for that. Otherwise, like, if you have the tonnage to use it, put it on. I don't use Beagle Active Probe all that much on my inner sphere mechs. Heat sinks. This is how you add more heat dissipation to your mech. We will go into heat dissipation later on when I explain the mech stats at the bottom. Okay, case. Case is how you prevent ammo explosions from happening in your mech. So as you see, I have ammo here. If I get shot in my left torso and I have no more armor left, the ammo has a chance to detonate. If the ammo detonates, it will blow up my left torso, but it'll also do damage to each other component around it, and will probably kill me because it'll blow up my engine in my center torso through my armor. It'll go into my mech underneath the armor and kill the engine. So if you have ammo, put case with it if you can afford the slots for it. Case weighs nothing now. It used to weigh something back when the game first came out, but they made it so case weighs nothing. If you can use case, use it. Engines, we have already talked about different engines. Play with that if you want to. Engines are a bit pricey, so just be careful on how much you spend on that. Don't just go buying engines for no reason. Consumables are items that are one shot, one use items. So cool shot will dissipate a lot of heat from your mech. It'll drain heat from your mech real quick. That being said, it is a one-time use. You take it and you drag it on. You can tell it to auto refill by checking this little box. Artillery strikes are wherever you're pointing. When you push the button to activate artillery strike, it will put a smoke signal on that point that you're aiming at, and an artillery strike will happen in a circle around it. Airstrikes are the exact same thing, except they bomb in a straight line. UAV, this is another really commonly used one. The cool shot and UAV are the most commonly used ones. UAV will shoot up a little unit directly above your mech wherever you're at. They'll fly up in the air and will spot things within the radius around your mech. So for a 240 meter radius around that spot where you put it up. So you can put up a UAV and keep running, and it will spot anything that come within that range. UAVs can be shot down, but they are still a very, very useful tool for looking on the other side of a wall, or looking up a cliff to see if there's anything above you or below you. It is just a extremely useful tool. Cool shots are very useful for keeping your weapons in the fight longer. So back to this window here, we're gonna go down to mech stats. This is where you get into like the nitty-gritty points of what's going on. But there are important ones, and there's ones that you don't need to worry about. The important ones are going to be things like firepower, the right number. don't worry about it. The left number is the important one. The left number is just going to show your alpha strike, how many points of damage your mech does when you fire everything at once, when you push the button to fire all your guns at one time. Your speed, this is going to show you how fast you move forward and backwards. Jump distance, this is if you have jump jets on your mech. This will show how far you can go. Engine, this will show what engine you have. Sensor range, not important. Tonnage, this will show the current tonnage, max tonnage. This will probably just be 50-50 or 70-70 or whatever, 99% of the time. Slots are going to be what is like all these empty slots, how many are available versus how many you have total. Armor, this is going to tell you how much armor you have, not really gonna matter. Heat management, this is an important one. This is how much heat dissipation versus like the maximum ratio. So the number on the left here, if it's 2, that means you have the highest heat dissipation you can have on your mech, basically. You kind of don't want to go below 1.4, 1.5 out of 2, because once you get below that, you start getting to that territory where heat's going to start becoming a really big problem. Newer players will struggle with heat and will struggle with shutting down more. More experienced players are going to run builds that are a little bit hotter, but they can manage it and they know what weapons they can fire at what time to not overheat and blow up their mech. So heat management is extremely important. This is your heat sinks. This will tell you how many heat sinks you have, how many you have in your engine. It's not that important. These boxes here will be checked when you have an active probe on. If you have an AMS system on, this little triangle will turn green. This shows you the hard points on your mech. Honestly, this paper doll is not that important. Consumables, not that important. Quirks. Quirks is where we're going to get into the fine-tuning of the mech. Of you look at this list of quirks and you're going to find out what is this mech supposed to do, or how can I get the most out of this mech. So for this one, we have energy cooldown negative 15%, which means energy weapons cycle 15% faster. So you fire them and their cooldown time before you can fire them again is 15% faster. That's a good thing. That's amazing, actually. Energy heat minus 5%. That means energy weapons make 5% less heat. So it looks like we'll want to run a bunch of energy weapons, which makes sense. There are 5 energy hardpoints on this mech. That tracks. SRM 246 cooldown. So that means your SRMs are going to cool down 15% faster. So these things here that I just put on, this is going to cool down, that means cycle 15% faster. That's great. Gives you higher DPM. You can shoot more missiles rapidly. But then it has a missile cooldown of 10%. So what that means is that your SRMs, because they are missiles, will get 15% and 10% additional cooldown. Your SRM fires 25% faster. This is really big and really kind of shows you what this mech is supposed to do. It's supposed to fire missiles, specifically SRMs. That's what they want you to be using. They want you to use SRMs. They want you to be kind of a little bit of a brawler mech. So your missile velocity 10%. Honestly, this one's not that important. I don't find velocity quirks to be that amazing. Survival. This is not something you commonly see on a lot of mechs. You don't commonly see this much survival, this much extra armor on the center torso, left torso, and right torso. All this extra structure. This means this mech is very durable. It can take a lot of hits and it can dish them out too. That makes this mech very survivable. Plus it has a crit chance receiving negative 30%. That means when you lose your armor and somebody shoots at you with no armor on, the chance of it critting your mech, that means blowing up the ammo, blowing up a component, hitting your engine, is 30% less. That's really good. That makes this mech a lot more durable and a lot harder to kill and a lot harder to take down. And for a medium, that's a big deal. Come down here, all this here does not matter. Really don't ever look at it. It does matter to more experienced players, but for new players, none of this matters. Do not look at any of this at the bottom. It doesn't matter to you at all. So we'll push this button up here in the top left corner of this box and just push it back down. We really don't need that. So now we understand this mech is good for SRMs. This mech is good for energy. That kind of shows us what direction we want to go. So the types of missiles we have, like this rocket launcher stuff. Honestly, don't mess with rocket launchers. They're one-time use weapons. They have their place, but not really that often. Streak SRMs, you have to have a lock on to make them work. They're fine. They're good whenever you get them in groups on mechs, but we only have 2 missile slots. It's not really what we're aiming for. MRMs fire a bunch of little missiles at once. These are really fun. They're really good to use. But remember, our quirks are for SRMs. So we're probably just going to focus on those. Now, what SRM stands for, it stands for short range missile. These only go up to 270 meters. They don't go any beyond that. So that means our mech is going to really want to get up in there and brawl, like face to face with the enemy. It has the armor to do it. It has the structure to do it. So now we have the weaponry that we're looking for to do it. So now we're going to look at energy. Since we have both of our missile hardpoints filled up, let's look at our energy hardpoints. We have 5 of them. Now, the one in the head is only a single slot. So we need to look at slots. What can we fit in a single slot? Medium pulse lasers are honestly what my immediate brain was looking at, of like 270 meters. I'm probably going to be in that range. Medium pulse lasers kind of really fall on that. Medium pulse lasers have a good mid-range, but also do a lot of damage in a really fast time. So when you fire SRMs and you fire medium pulse lasers, they're going to really sync up. They're very good weapon systems to have together. And this mech kind of wants you to do that. So let's go ahead and look at if we put a bunch of medium pulse lasers on our mech, where we're looking at 47.5 tons, which will give us, we'll just put in some ammo, gives us 3.5 tons of ammo for SRMs, and then 5 medium pulse lasers. We look down at the bottom, it gives us 55.7 firepower. That means we do 55.7 damage with just volleying everything at the enemy. But you see, it comes at a cost. Heat management, we're at 0.93. That's not a good thing. We need more heat sinks. We need to make this mech a lot cooler. But how can we do that, you might ask? This is where the upgrades come in. So let's go into the bottom left corner of this, and there's 4 upgrades we can do. These upgrades are going to give you more tonnage to work with, but will take up slots. So the missile guidance is kind of an exception to that rule. So missile guidance, you can go to Artemis, and Artemis takes your missiles and spreads them a lot closer together. So you can be a lot more accurate with your stuff. It takes up an extra slot and extra ton. So your 2 slot SRMs become 3 slot, and they, instead of weighing 3 tons, they weigh 4 tons. It just makes everything weigh a ton more for your weapon systems that have Artemis. Structure, this is the big one. So Indosteel, if you look, it takes 14 slots. So 14 of these slots will be taking up. But when I push it, I gain 2.5 tons. That's a lot of tonnage. That's another, what, 2 heat sinks I could put on, which will help a little bit with heat management. So let's go ahead and look at what that will do. My heat management goes from 0.93 to 1.02. That's a pretty good difference, but we're still not quite where I want to be yet. So if we move one more up to heat sinks, we can put on something called double heat sinks. Double heat sinks make sure all your heat sinks 40% more efficient, including the ones in the engine, the 10 that are already in the engine, but they take a lot more space. So you see these 3 only take up 1 slot each. When I put on double, you're going to watch this number go up. And when I put these heat sinks back in, 1.23. Suddenly, we're at a number that's a lot more manageable. But as you probably would have noticed, we're at 49.5 tons. We're going to take off half ton ammo, and we're going to put on another double heatsink. This puts us at 1.28, which might seem a little high, and it is a little bit toasty for this mech. But as I'm a more experienced player, I'm going to run it like this. If it wasn't me, I would definitely pull one of these pulse lasers off and put on 2 more heat sinks. Something like this will give you a lot more brawling, a little more longevity in the fight without having to worry about heat near as bad. So we're going to build it like this. for so everyone can see what it looks like. Armor upgrades for ferrofibers and light ferrofibers. This will give you a little more tonnage. It's a minor amount of tonnage for armor. So if I go with ferrofibers, I gain 1 ton, but if you look, I have to make up 1 more slot so I can even put that on there. That's not worth it to me. Light ferrofibers is very similar to the same thing. It only gives me half a ton, but even then I don't have enough slots for it. I usually don't use armor, the ferrofibers or light ferrofibers all that much. It really isn't worth it a lot of the time. You don't need it most of the time, so you can put more tonnage. That's more for like light mechs. Light mechs really use that armor because every little bit of tonnage matters for them. But for medium, especially like this, a brawly medium, I don't see the usage of having ferrofibers armor. Okay, so you remember what we talked about earlier. I have these 3 tons of SRM ammo. Remember that case that we talked about? I'm gonna put case on my mech. Case in each torso and here. Actually, I don't need a case here because it's your center torso. If that ammo blows up, you're dead anyway, even if you have case. But I'll put case here and here. The reason for that is if these torsos get hit and that SRAM ammo explodes, the case will keep it from blowing up anything else in my mech. So basically, I'm betting against that happening. So now I'm going to save this mech, or I could enter testing grounds with it and test it to see how it works. So I take this into testing grounds before we solidify our build. We're going to go into Forest Colony since it's a good heat neutral map. We're going to use that one as our testing ground for a lot of our mechs. Actually, I like to use it because it gives me a good baseline what the mech's going to perform like. So this is our first interface into the game. I'm going to show you one thing for right now because this is imperative for testing. The rest of this we will go over later. So in the bottom right corner is your weapon groups. This they don't teach you in the academy, but I'll teach you this here. So on your keyboard, you have arrow keys, right? On the right side of your keyboard. Those arrow keys will correspond with where you are on the grid for selecting weapon groups. Weapon group 1 is going to be your mouse button. That's going to be this mouse button. This is weapon group 1. Weapon group 2. Weapon group 3. Weapon group 4. And then if you have more buttons, 5 and 6 could be on your mouse, but 5 and 6 normally are on your keyboard. So I like to put most of my weapons on group 1 and 2, and sometimes on 3, but rarely. So we're going to put all of our lasers on group 1. We're going to put all of our SRMs on group 2. So when I click 1, fires on my lasers. When I click 2, fires the SRMs. Now what we're going to do is we're going to fire both SRMs and lasers at the same time. Gives us 36% heat. That's a good number to remember. It's a good thing to know that, hey, I can fire everything at 60% and I'm not going to overheat. I'm not going to shut down or die, one or the other, if you have override on. So as such, that's really it. That's really it for testing grounds for right now. There are mechs usually in testing grounds you can test them on. I know right here there's a commando.
Target acquired.
That you can look, you can test out, like how fast are you going to hit, how much do, like your SRMs, how much do they spread. That's a good thing to know, how much your SRMs spread. If they spread too much, you need to know that. You know how far away they go, how close you are to a mech. These spread quite a bit. That's just the way SRM6s kind of are, but that's why you have the lasers for more pinpoint damage.
Target destroyed.
And there we go. So that's what testing ground is for. This is before I have even bought all the components and solidified the mech. Now we're out of testing grounds. We're going to buy this mech. We're going to solidify it and we're going to make it done, ready to go. We're gonna hit the bottom left corner here. There's a big old golden save button. It'll tell you how much it's going to cost you in C-bills, which is going to be 3.7 mil. That's fine. I have enough to cover it, so I'm gonna hit save. They'll tell you, are you sure you want to buy this? I'm gonna say okay, and bam, that mech is ready to go. We're ready to hit quick play and hit the battlefield with it. But before you hit the battlefield, you might think, well, there's some things I want to do to it to kind of spice your mech up a little bit. So on the left side, you have your skills button. Let's go to your skills menu. We'll go over this probably later on, not right now. Weapon groups. This is where you can just manually do that thing I showed you in the training area, where you can just manually select where you want all your weapons to be grouped at. Camo spec. This is where you're going to select how you want your mech to look. Play around in here. It doesn't solidify buying anything until you hit that save button in the bottom left corner, but there's a lot of colors and a lot of things to look at. Just a little quick hint for you. If you select colors and then you go to once it's called basic, all these colors here are available for C-bills. These are the only colors in the game that are available for C-bills, but you can get a red, you can get a blue, you can get an orange. That's not just a basic green. So you can get a little bit of color variety for C-bills without having to pay a dime. You can put on decals in this menu. You can put on your bolt-ons, which are just little components that make your mech look cooler or add stuff to them or whatnot. These are not important at all. They do not affect how the way your mech works, but you can put them on there if you want to look, I don't know, a little different. Patterns work the same way. These do not affect anything at all, but they affect the way your mech looks. So you can get like a different design to your mech. This one looks like bones and stuff like that. There's a lot of different designs, a lot of different things you can do. Everything though will cost you money to do so in this menu. Cockpit. So in cockpit, this is kind of more the same. This is just internal stuff where you can add in statues, little computer things, a gun that spins because you want to. Hanging items work the same way. There are some that do give you extra money, but most are just cosmetic. The war horns will actually play a sound whenever you kill someone. So whenever you kill a mech, this sound will play. Or you'll play like a song or something. Lights don't play any music at all. There are some that don't play music, but most will play music or sound effects of some sort like this. Yep. And that will happen every time you get a kill. There's a lot of them. Just go through here, press one, hit the little preview button, and it'll tell you, or you'll hear what that war horn is. Okay, so we go back to loadout, where I'm going to show you how to import a build. So if someone has a build, your friend has a build that's like, this is a really good build, or you find one like MechDB or GrimMech, which are two websites that are good for looking at builds, this is how you import a build. Down here, there are these 4 buttons here. Once you export, this will put a build code into your clipboard that you can paste in the Discord or whatnot, so you can give other people your build. Then you have the import button, which with the import button, you can paste Control V a build of your mech, of someone else's mech, to your mech, which will then put everything in that needs to be there. It'll set the armor, it'll set the weapon systems, it'll set the ammo, it'll set case, everything. Exactly how it was built, it'll set everything to be properly in the place that it needs to be. Then you can hit the save button here to save that configuration of that mech. You could then also save your build to your local drive. So you hit the save button, a window will pop up usually that you can then save it to your computer. Then load, you can load one of those files if you push on that one. Okay, now we're going to go over skills. This is where we get into the fine tuning of your mech. So this is where experience is actually spent. So we're going to look at the top right first, which is going to be the mech enhancements tab, what's called. Add SP. And the add SP, it'll come up with this big window here, which you will then use to purchase skill points using your XP. You'll drag this bar. You can use GXP to purchase skill points. Or if you have a mech that's old, if you have an older account, you might have some historic skill points or experience points to use. Right, so I'm going to use the historic points here. Now I'm going to hit OK, and per point that you transfer from XP to a skill point, it's 25k C-bills and 500 XP. So for 3, 75k, 1.5k XP, bam. Now I have 3 skill points available. So skill points you use to unlock these nodes. And what these nodes do is these nodes add special little abilities to your mech. So in Misrack here, I'm just going to explain a few of them. You can search through this on your own. but I'll go through most of them. So missile rack just increases the ammo that each node does on your mech. So if I do missile rack 1, my SRMs carry 10 more missiles per slot that is used on my mech. But if I do both points, they'll carry 20 more missiles. So for each little missile ammo slot I have on my mech, I have 20 more missiles. That's a big deal. Missile spread. For each node you do here, the missile spread is smaller. High explosive. This will increase the crit chance of your missiles when they hit a mech. So laser duration, that one there is pretty much always, you always want to have those for anything you do laser. They're very good to have because the shorter your laser duration, the shorter you have to keep it on target, the faster you get to that cooldown so you can fire again. Just increases your damage per minute, which is the name of the game. Down here in the purple is all your ballistic stuff. So the magazine capacity, these will just increase how much ammo each node carries, or each slot carries on your mech. LBX spread will tighten up your LBX. LBX are shotguns basically. Gauss charge. If you have a Gauss rifle, you gotta have these. These just increase how long you can hold down the trigger on a Gauss rifle once you charge it. UAC jam chance. This is for ultra auto cannons and rotary auto cannons. It'll decrease the ramp up time for the rotaries and decrease the jam chance and jam duration of the ultra auto cannons, so you can keep them into the fight longer. So these tabs over here are cooldown, and what cooldown does is it decreases how long between cycling of whatever weapon system you're using. Range will increase the range of all your weapons. Heat gen will decrease how much heat each weapon generates. These are all kind of important depending on the mech you're building. Velocity. I stay away from these personally for most of my builds except missile builds. Reason being is you will figure out how fast different rounds travel for ballistic weapons. You will know how fast an AC-20 round goes, or how fast an AC-5 round goes, how fast your Gauss rifle round goes, and you will get used to that. You'll get used to leading targets with that speed. When you start to mess with the velocity, especially when it's only 3%, it starts getting really random on like, do I have velocity quirks on this weapon or not? Do I need to aim further or behind? Then you'll start missing shots that you shouldn't be missing. You know how fast an AC-20 travels. Why are you starting to mess with this velocity and using up points that could be useful elsewhere for that? That's why I don't use them on there. To each their own. Personally, I am not a big fan of using velocity skills. That being said, for missiles, especially lock-on missiles, I absolutely use them because it decreases the amount of time you have to hold your lock on a target for your missile to get to where it's going. Because when you fire an LRM, when you fire it, you have to hold lock on the target. It has to lock on. It has to shoot out of your mech, travel across the map, and hit the mech that you're hitting, that you're aiming at, right? That whole time that's traveling through the air, you have to hold that lock on. And if you increase the velocity, it gets there faster. Don't have to hold the lock on near as long. It's just kind of a no-brainer to have these on anything that's using LRMs as a main weapon system. So we're going to come up here to the survival area. That's going to be these ones here. Skeletal density. This just increases your structure, which is how much damage a internal component can take before it breaks. So it increases how much damage your torso or your arm can take before it destroys it. Armor hardening. These are pretty much vital for most mechs. It's how durable you are, how durable your armor is, how much armor you can have before they get through into your internal components. I usually max out armor hardening on every mech I have because the more hits you can take, the longer you stay in the fight, the longer you get to play. Reinforced casing. This decreases the amount of critical chance enemies have on destroying your internal components. I don't use this super often, but I will use it on assault mechs because you do just take a lot of damage. You take a beating. Shock absorbance. This is absorbs fall damage. I never touch these. It really just doesn't come into play that often. AMS overload. I only use these on 2 mechs, and that's my 2 mechs that have a lot of AMS systems. Most mechs only have 1, maybe 2. There are few mechs that have 3 or 4. I think only one of them has 4. Mobility. This is going to be this where things get a little more complicated. I like using speed tweak on most of my mechs and connect burst because this just makes your mech overall faster, which is more responsive to acceleration, and just overall going faster. Each speed tweak gives you 1.5% speed, so your mech just goes faster. Getting into position faster, getting out of harm's way faster is always beneficial. Speed is the ultimate form of armor, because if you're not there, you can't be shot, right? Hard brake is just how fast your mech stops. Hard brake's pretty good on mechs that go really fast, or mechs that have a lot of weight behind them. Heavier mechs stop slower because it's a lot of weight going forward, right? So hard brake just makes so you stop a little bit faster. Anchor turn makes you turn faster. This is for those really fast mechs. Most mechs don't need it. Torso speed, torso on, torso pitch. This is going to vary per mech. Talk to people that you play with, or if you get build from someone, they will tell you whether or not these are good. Every mech is different on these ones. On things like an urban mech, torso speed is amazing because urban mechs are the only mech that can move a full 360 degrees on their turret or on their torso, so it's like a turret. And that's just one example of hundreds that are in the game. Jump jets, this mech doesn't have jump jets, so this isn't really that important. Honestly, I don't use a lot of points in jump jets. Either your mech has really good jump jets or you just have just enough to get working. I don't like spending points in this, but some people do. Depends on the mech you're building. So operations, this is where a lot of things just kind of randomly fall. Improved gyros, never touch those. Never touch speed retention. Usually if you lose a leg, you're dead anyway, so speed retention is just kind of a waste of points in my opinion. Improved gyro is just for cockpit shake. It's not really that important either. Quick ignition, that's for if you shut down a lot. Honestly, I don't use quick ignition ever either. Some people like using it. I avoid it personally, but to each their own. Cool run, these ones are quite kind of important. For each point in cool run you have, you dissipate 2% more heat from your mech. That's pretty big. It's pretty important because the faster heat goes down, the faster you can get back into the fight. Heat containment just increases the amount of heat you can hold before you overheat. These ones aren't near as important as cool run, but they can be important for a lot of really hot, heavy builds. Sensors. This is a big point of contention for a lot of people. I am a big proponent of seismic sensors. So seismic sensor 1, sensor 2. What this will do is on your mini map, it'll put a little blip. Those little blips is a mech that you can see walking around on your mini map, and that is so important because then you can see people on the other side of walls. You can see how many there are around like a corner. It's just very important information to have because you can basically have wall hacks. It's just extra information for you. Radar deprivation will actually give you like a little beep every time someone locks on you or loses lock on you. That's kind of important to know if you've been seen or not. I don't use a lot of radar deprivation, but some mechs I will, especially on my lights. I'll use radar deprivation, or on my LRM boats I'll use radar dep at least 1 point just so I know if I've been spotted or not. The enhanced ECM tabs are also here. If you have an ECM based mech, ECM stands for electronic countermeasure. If you have those, these are kind of must-have tabs. Both of these are very good. Not vital, but they're very helpful for helping keep your ECM system working to its peak efficiency. Target decay, these are more for your LRM boats. I feel I don't really use target decay all that much. Target tension kind of falls in the same thing. Advanced zoom. This is a button you should probably assign on your keyboard if you run Gauss rifles or PPCs, or even a bunch of AC2s, things that have really long range ER large lasers. This will give you an extra picture-in-picture window. I'll throw up what that looks like here, that you can zoom even further in. It says 4x magnification. This will give you the option to snipe. This is what sniping uses, is this advanced zoom node. Okay, we're going to come to consumables. This is kind of where just random stuff is thrown down here. The consumable slot +1, almost always take that. For just a single skill point, you can put on a UAV and a cool shot, and that's what I use on most of my mechs. Both of those things are very, very useful. Having that extra consumable slot is pretty big. UAV duration and enhanced UAV stuff will just give you more UAV things. If you're running a big scout mech, having these nodes is handy. Advanced salvos and this things here, enhanced spotting. None of this here I'm very big fan of. I don't use any of these that much. I think they're just kind of, they're okay on their own. Enhanced cool shot. I don't do cool shot cooldown, but enhanced cool shot 1, 2, and coolant reserves, and it's extra consumable slot. These are really useful for whenever you're running a really heavy, hot laser boat, because they'll keep you in that fight longer. Capture assist. Don't touch these. These are a waste of points. Unless you're running a meme that you're going and capturing bases all the time, I wouldn't even touch these. Enhanced narc. If you're running narc, like a narc mech that relies on that as their main system of harassment or whatnot, these are a must. These are so vital to that system because it just gives you 30% longer narc duration, and your narc missiles go faster. What narc is, I haven't explained this yet, and the narc's a little missile system. It's a single missile that attaches to a mech and makes that mech permanently spotted for the duration of that narc, which means LRM systems can lock onto it faster and hold lock on it, and you can kind of just watch the mech as they're walking around for a good 30 seconds, up to a minute sometimes even, which is detrimental to the survival of that enemy mech that just got narked. I've been on the receiving end of it, and it is very, very ugly. So to end off this video, I'm going to show you my settings and what I use for settings for the game. A lot of this is personal preference, and then we're going to type a few things, and that'll be the end of it. So the big one here is game settings. Arm lock, I turn arm lock off. If you can play without arm lock, I feel like most people who do that are better players overall, because being able to use your arm weapons to track light mechs moving faster or to hit those vital component slots is very, very helpful. It's very good for most mechs. That being said, it's a good idea if you do use arm lock to have a key that turns off arm lock, so if something's below you or above you that your torso can't see, you can turn off the arm lock and aim with your arms to hit UAVs above you or light mechs below you. Disable tooltips, turn that off. Throttle decay. This is whether or not, if you let go of the W key, if your mech will slow down to a stop. I use throttle because I like holding on W, especially on the bigger maps, and just letting the mech walk away. And I can go and click something on another screen. I can look at the mini map. I can set my weapon groups while my mech is walking. I like using throttle decay so I can concentrate on other stuff while I'm walking around. Start in third person. I'd stay away from it. The third person view is, in my opinion, the worst way to play the game, because you lose the minimap, and the minimap has so much information. It's so important to know where your allies are. It's so important to know, like, the seismic sensor is on the minimap, so if you do this, you lose seismic, which is like losing wall hacks. It's kind of crazy to me. Enable cockpit glass. Turn this off. There's no reason to ever have this on. I understand a lot of people like having it for immersion because it has like little dirt and debris on your cockpit glass. Turn it off. It's just extra crap to clutter up your screen that you don't need. It doesn't do anything for you except make things harder to look at, which things are really hard to look at in this game if you play it long enough. Enable directional arrow. Always have this checked. This is so important to know where your legs are pointing sometimes. Cockpit monitors. Turn this off if you're running lower graphics settings, because this does take graphical power to have these little extra cockpit monitors on. So turn that off if you're running lower graphics settings. It will help save you a few frames. First person FOV. This is their field of view in the cockpit. I leave it at 60. I advise everyone to leave it at 60. Once you go to that higher FOV, your camera starts pulling away from your cockpit and starts giving you a really weird viewing angle on it. Some people like playing with higher FOV. I think those people are kind of crazy, honestly, but to each your own. I advise sticking with the 60. That's what the game sets it at for a reason. Mouse saying this is all 100% to you. Leave smooth and acceleration at the very bottom. These will just screw around with how your stuff aims. Rest of the stuff, just kind of leave it the way it is. Reward display mode, I put it as classic because modern puts it in the middle of your screen, classic puts it in the bottom left corner of your screen during combat. I prefer the bottom left corner. It's just less stuff on the screen. Audio, this we're going to set all your audio stuff. I turn the music down because the music does get really annoying after a while. Video, this is where you set all your video settings. Hit the advanced option, you can get even more things here. There's nothing really here that I would say is important to change except motion blur. Have that off. People who play with motion blur I think are like crazy. Motion blur just makes me sick personally, but also just makes everything smeary. Having motion blur off will make everything more crisp. You can see those torsos and those individual parts of the mech better. It'll just make you better at aiming. Keyboard, this is where you can customize all your keyboard controls. The ones I like to change personally are going to be cool shot, call artillery strike, call airstrike, UAV, mask. These ones here, the cool shot I have on F, UAV I have on G. The reason I do this is set up their closure to my WASD. I can just do them faster. Artillery strike and airstrikes not using near as much. I keep them on my 1 and 2 key. Controller, please never use a controller. Your aim will be just astronomically worse than everyone else. This game was just not built with joysticks or controllers in mind. It just wasn't. Then you have save, reset will set everything default, and then cancel. And that is pretty much everything. You're kind of ready to go from there. I kind of taught you how to build a mech, how to buy them, where to find everything, how to navigate the menus. So just grab your mech, hit quick play, and get into a match. This has been Dredrick, and if you have any questions, drop them in the comments. I'll put a link to my Discord in there. So yeah, I'll see you on the battlefield.